John Turner stood at the edge of his sprawling backyard, the early morning sun casting a golden glow over Titan, his prize bull. The massive beast stood motionless in his pen, muscles rippling beneath a sleek, dark coat that shimmered like polished obsidian. Titan was more than just an animal. He was John's legacy, the culmination of years of hard work and quiet sacrifice. Every neighbor who passed by admired the bull in secret, even if few dared say it aloud. "Look at him," John whispered, pride swelling in his chest. The finest in the county, but not everyone saw Titan the same way. At the far end of the cul-de-sac, behind neatly trimmed hedges and a row of pristine white fences, Karen Miller's house sat like a fortress. Karen was the HOA president, a woman with a hawkish gaze and a reputation for enforcing rules with merciless precision. Her lips curled into a thin smile whenever she glanced toward John's property, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. John knew the unspoken rules of their community. Livestock weren't exactly banned, but the HOA's covenants were vague enough to be weaponized against anyone who threatened the neighborhood's carefully curated image. Titan's presence had always been a thin line, a delicate balance between John's heritage and Karen's ever-watchful gaze. That morning, John's quiet reverie was shattered by the sharp crinkle of paper slipping under his front door. He bent down and picked up a folded note, its edges worn and creased. Unfolding it, he read the chilling message, scrawled in hurried, uneven handwriting. "Get rid of the bull, or face the consequences." This isn't just about rules anymore. His heart quickened. Who could have sent this? A prank, a warning, or a threat? John's mind raced back to the last HOA meeting. Karen's cold stare drilling into him as she spoke about protecting property values and community standards. But this note went beyond formalities. It was personal, dangerous. He looked back at Titan, who blinked slowly, almost sensing the tension in the air. John wasn't a man to back down, but the creeping unease gnawed at him. The neighborhood had always seemed peaceful, a quiet refuge from the chaos of the city, but beneath the manicured lawns and polite greetings, something dark was stirring. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife, Maria. "Did you see the news? Another HOA complaint about Titan. Be careful." John's jaw clenched. The news was spreading. Karen had already whispered to a few neighbors, painting Titan as a menace. Too loud, too dangerous, too wild for their perfect neighborhood. John stepped outside again, eyes scanning the familiar street. The neighbors went about their routines, but a few glanced his way with wary, furtive looks. Whispers floated like ghosts on the breeze. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a dark SUV parked suspiciously near the entrance of the neighborhood. The tinted windows hid whoever was inside, but something about the vehicle felt out of place. John's fist tightened. He wasn't just fighting for Titan anymore. He was fighting for his family's honor, for the right to hold on to a piece of his identity in a community that wanted to erase it. As the sun climbed higher, John made a silent vow. No matter what it took, he wouldn't let Karen, or anyone else, destroy Titan. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Because in the quiet shadows of the HOA, a war was already underway, and the stakes were higher than anyone imagined. John woke to the piercing buzz of his phone again. Another message from Maria. "Karen sent you another letter. Says you're violating HOA rules." John sighed, dragging himself out of bed. The tension in their neighborhood was thickening like a storm cloud on the horizon. And Titan, his beloved bull, was caught in the crossfire. By mid-morning, the official letter arrived, crisp and formal, with the HOA's seal stamped at the top. It claimed John was in violation for excessive noise disturbances and unapproved livestock presence. Fines would begin accruing immediately unless Titan was removed within 7 days. John's blood boiled. He had researched every rule in the HOA covenant, confident he was in the clear. No mention of bulls specifically, and certainly no clear mandate banning his Titan. But Karen was a master at twisting words, and now she was weaponizing the community against him. The neighborhood that once seemed warm and welcoming was fracturing. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, stealing glances at John's property, as if he had become a pariah. Children who once ran freely near Titan's pen now hurried past with uneasy glances. John noticed the first sign of something sinister that very evening. Returning from the grocery store, he spotted fresh tire tracks crisscrossing the muddy path to Titan's barn. Tracks that shouldn't have been there. The ground was disturbed. Footprints pressed into the soft earth. He scanned the darkened street, but no one was in sight. "Who's messing with you?" Maria asked quietly. When he told her, John shook his head. "I don't know, but this isn't just about HOA rules anymore." That night, as he lay in bed, strange noises echoed from the barn. A low, unsettling scraping sound. John's heart pounded as he grabbed his flashlight and crept outside. Titan was restless. Tossing his massive head, John's beam caught something, a shadow darting behind the barn. "Hey!" John shouted into the night, but only silence answered. The next morning brought more unwelcome surprises. The wooden fence around Titan's pen was splintered. One of the gate's hinges broken. Whoever was behind this was escalating, and John was running out of options. At the next HOA meeting, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Karen, composed and cold as ever, presented a series of community complaints against John, each more exaggerated than the last. "She's turning neighbors against you," Maria whispered during the meeting, gripping John's arm. But John refused to stay, silent. When his turn came, he stood tall and spoke with fierce determination. "My bull Titan has never harmed anyone," John said. Eyes locked on Karen's. "I've followed every rule I can find. This isn't just about rules. It's about fear, control, and personal vendettas." Murmurs rippled through the room. Karen's lips tightened. "This community deserves peace and order. Titan threatens that." John's gaze swept the room, catching the mixed expressions, some skeptical, some fearful. After the meeting, John found a note slipped under his door. No signature, just a single chilling line. "This ends soon. Beware." The message left John, rattled but not defeated. The silent war had begun, and Titan was the battleground. With every step John took, the shadow of danger loomed larger. Who was orchestrating these attacks? And how far would Karen go to make sure Titan was gone? John didn't have answers yet, but one thing was clear. He wasn't alone in this fight, and the community's fractured loyalties would soon decide the outcome. The community hall was packed to the brim, every seat taken, every eye locked on the simmering conflict between John and Karen. The usual polite HOA meeting had morphed into a battleground. Electric with anticipation, whispers buzzed like static as neighbors took sides, some nervously shifting in their seats, others sitting rigid with judgment. Karen stood at the front, her posture perfect, voice icy and controlled. "This is not just about a bull," she announced, eyes scanning the room like a hawk hunting prey. "It's about preserving the quality of life here. John Turner's blatant disregard for our rules threatens everything we've built." John clenched his fists, but refused to back down. When it was his turn, he rose slowly, the weight of the room pressing down on him. "I'm not just fighting for my bull," John said, his voice steady, but laced with frustration. I'm fighting for fairness, for truth, and for the right to keep a piece of my heritage." The room tensed. Karen shot him a sharp look. "You speak of heritage, but what about respect for your neighbors?" A hand shot up from the back, a voice unfamiliar to John. "Respect? Maybe Karen's been hiding more than we know. This isn't just about Titan or property values. There's something personal here." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Karen's expression flickered, just for a moment, but she quickly masked it with a tight smile. John's curiosity piqued. Who was this voice? And what did they know? Before anyone else could speak, Karen stepped forward. "Enough distractions," she said firmly. "Let's focus on the facts. Complaints have come in, noise, safety concerns, and yes, the bull's presence itself." A woman from the audience raised her hand. "I live 2 houses down. I've seen Karen walking Titan's pen late at night near the barn. What was she doing there?" A hush fell. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line, but her gaze flicked to the side. John felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer a simple HOA dispute. It was a war of secrets. After the meeting, as neighbors filtered out, John spotted someone waiting near the exit. A middle-aged man he hadn't seen before. The man approached cautiously. "I'm Mark," he said in a low voice. "I used to be on the HOA board before Karen took over. There's more going on than you realize. Karen's obsessed with control. She's been manipulating the board, twisting rules to her advantage." John frowned. "Why tell me this now?" Mark glanced over his shoulder nervously. "Because I don't want to see you destroyed like the others who stood up to her. And because I think she's hiding something darker." John swallowed hard, realizing he had just stepped deeper into a dangerous game. That night, John's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "You're digging where you shouldn't. Watch your back." The warning sent a cold shiver down his spine. As the days passed, the neighborhood's fragile peace shattered. People whispered behind closed doors. Rumors flourished, and the lines between friend and foe blurred. John caught a glimpse of Karen in her pristine house, talking on the phone with an intensity that spoke of plans beyond mere HOA disputes. One evening, walking near Titan's pen, John found a crudely carved wooden figurine of a bull, stabbed with a rusty nail, hanging from the fence. It was a message, sinister, clear, and meant to intimidate. John's jaw tightened. The stakes were higher than ever, and the battle lines were drawn. He wasn't just fighting for Titan anymore. He was fighting for survival. The neighborhood had never felt so cold. John stood outside Titan's pen, the moon casting eerie shadows over the wooden fence. The night air was thick with an uneasy stillness, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. For days, John had felt eyes watching him, whispers trailing his every step, the warnings, the broken fence, the threats. They had all built to this moment. That night, as John closed the barn door, Titan looked up with calm, intelligent eyes, nuzzling John's hand. "I'll keep you safe," John whispered, more to himself than to the bull. He double-checked the locks, then went inside, but sleep eluded him. He paced the living room, glancing out the window toward the barn every few minutes. The neighborhood was quiet, deceptively so. Around midnight, a sudden chilling sound shattered the silence. A loud crash, followed by frantic stomping. John's heart raced. He grabbed his flashlight and sprinted outside. Titan's pen was in chaos. The wooden gate hung off its hinges, splinters scattered on the ground. And there, on the cold dirt floor, lay Titan, motionless. "No!" John shouted, dropping to his knees beside the great beast. Titan's heavy breathing was faint but steady. Blood trickled from a wound on his flank. John's mind spun. How? Who? Why? He frantically examined the pen. The broken hinges told a story of forced entry. Someone had broken in, had attacked Titan. Or worse, deliberately left him injured. His phone buzzed violently in his pocket. A text from Karen flashed on the screen. This is what happens when rules are broken. You brought this on yourself. John's hands trembled, fury and grief crashing over him. Karen's cold message was a slap in the face. But he refused to believe she had gone this far. Could she? He called the vet immediately, praying Titan would pull through. The hours stretched unbearably. When the vet finally arrived, she shook, her head slowly. The bull's injuries are severe. I'm sorry, John. There's nothing more we can do. John felt the world collapse. Titan, his pride, his legacy, dead, but the nightmare was only beginning. The next morning, Karen was already at the community bulletin board, posting a notice blaming John for animal neglect and endangering the neighborhood. Her carefully crafted words painted John as reckless and irresponsible, and she wasn't subtle about it. Neighbors whispered, their eyes cold or pitying. Some avoided John entirely. Others glanced with suspicion. John refused to stay silent. Titan didn't die because of me, he told anyone who would listen. Someone broke in. Someone wanted him dead. His claim was met with skepticism, even hostility. The tension spiraled. Then, without warning, legal papers arrived at John's doorstep. Karen was suing him for $1 million for emotional distress, damage to property values, and community disruption. John stared at the papers, disbelief and anger flooding him. The woman who had harassed him, broken his peace, and now crushed him with a lawsuit. His neighbors' support waned, leaving him isolated and under siege. John's fight had turned from protecting Titan to protecting himself. But deep inside, a spark burned. He would find the truth behind Titan's death, no matter what it cost. Because in a war like this, the shadows hid more than just secrets. They hid the real enemy. The stack of legal papers lay on John's kitchen table like a ticking bomb. His hands trembled slightly as he reread the lawsuit. Karen was suing him for $1 million. The accusations ranged from emotional distress to harming community, property values, but the real weight pressed down on him was the personal vendetta hidden behind the formal language. Maria watched silently, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. John, this isn't just about the bull anymore. Karen wants to destroy you. John nodded, jaw clenched. Then we'll fight. We don't have a choice. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, and the once muted gossip grew into outright speculation. Some neighbors whispered that John was reckless and dangerous. Others quietly questioned Karen's motives. The community's fragile alliances cracked wide open. John spent long days poring over HOA documents, digging into meeting minutes and covenants. That's when he discovered inconsistencies, odd amendments that seemed designed to target him. Specifically, the rules were vague, but Karen had twisted them with expert precision. At the same time, John noticed new signs of sabotage. The barn door latch tampered with, feed bins left open, and late-night sounds that suggested someone was sneaking around again. One night, as he checked Titan's empty pen, John spotted a small camera hidden among the bushes. Someone was spying on him. His breath caught. Who was watching? Karen? Or someone else? Determined to find answers, John hired a private investigator, a grizzled man named Frank with a reputation for uncovering hard truths in small towns. Frank's first report was chilling. Karen's financial troubles were worse than anyone knew, and she had close ties to a developer eager to buy up land in the neighborhood. The pieces began to fall into place. Karen's crusade against Titan wasn't just about rules or safety. It was about power and money. Meanwhile, the pressure of the lawsuit mounted. Every interaction with neighbors felt like a trial. Every whispered conversation, a calculated attack. John's phone rang constantly, with calls from lawyers and concerned friends. One evening, Maria found John staring blankly at the courthouse steps. On the local news, the headline blared, HOA lawsuit rocks quiet suburb. Bull owner faces $1 million claim. John's world had become a legal battlefield, and Titan's death was just the opening salvo. But John refused to be a victim. With Frank's help, John began gathering evidence, interviews, surveillance footage, financial records. The deeper they dug, the darker the truth grew. Karen's obsession was no secret. Her relentless grip on the HOA board masked a far more sinister plan involving the neighborhood's future. John knew the fight ahead would be brutal, but as he looked at Titan's empty pen, he promised himself this: he would uncover the truth and bring justice for Titan, for his family, and for the community that had been torn apart. Because in the war over Titan's legacy, the battle was only just beginning. John sat in the dim light of his study, a growing pile of documents scattered around him, like pieces of a shattered puzzle. The deeper he and Frank, the private investigator, dug, the more tangled the web became. Every new discovery revealed layers of deceit, manipulation, and greed beneath the HOA's pristine surface. Frank had uncovered something shocking. Karen Miller wasn't just an overzealous HOA president. She was a woman desperate to save her own crumbling finances. Her house was in foreclosure, and she owed thousands to a developer named Marcus Blake, a man eager to snap up parcels of land in the neighborhood for a sprawling commercial project. John shook his head. So Karen's trying to drive me out to help Blake buy my property. Frank nodded grimly. Exactly. And it's worse than that. Karen's been secretly meeting with Blake behind closed doors, pushing the HOA to impose rules that target specific homeowners, mostly people like you with property that's valuable or holds sentimental worth. John's stomach twisted. The fight wasn't just personal anymore. It was part of a larger scheme to strip residents of their land under the guise of community improvement. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. Stop digging, or Titan's death won't be the last. You don't want to see what happens next. John's heart pounded. The threats were escalating, the danger now unmistakable. Determined not to back down, John decided to confront Karen directly. He arranged a meeting at the local cafe, hoping to catch her off guard and get answers. The morning of the meeting, the streets felt heavier, neighbors watching with wary eyes, some whispering warnings, others offering furtive nods of encouragement. Karen arrived precisely on time, her expression a mask of calm. But John noticed the tightness around her eyes, the forced smile that didn't reach her lips. You're digging where you shouldn't, John, she said, voice low but sharp. I just want the truth, Karen. John replied evenly. Why are you doing this? Why push the HOA to ruin me and Titan? Karen's gaze hardened. This isn't personal. It's about protecting the neighborhood's future. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. John shook his head, disbelief flooding him. At what cost? Titan was innocent. You crossed a line. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand what's at stake. People like Blake have plans that go beyond this street. If you stand in their way, you won't just lose your bull. You'll lose everything. John felt a cold chill settle in his bones. The war was bigger than he had imagined, and he was just a pawn caught in the middle. As Karen left, John realized the fight wasn't just about one bull or one lawsuit. It was about the soul of the neighborhood and whether people like him could survive the storm. Back home, John looked at Titan's empty pen, the weight of loss heavy in the air. But his resolve was stronger than ever. He would expose the truth. He would fight for justice. And he would make sure Karen and her allies paid for what they'd done, because in this silent war, only one side could win, and John wasn't going down without a fight. The night was restless for John. His mind raced through the tangled web of deceit, threats, and betrayals that had swallowed his once peaceful life. Titan's absence left an aching void, but the fire in John's heart refused to dim. As dawn broke, a quiet knock startled him at the door. Opening it, John found a woman standing there, her expression cautious but determined. "I'm Lisa," she said softly. "I used to live here before the HOA turned into a battlefield. I know things about Karen, things that might help you." John blinked, suspicion and curiosity mixing in his gaze. "Why come to me now?" Lisa stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Because I couldn't stand by anymore. Karen's manipulations didn't start with you. I was one of her first targets, years ago, before Titan was even in the picture. She's been quietly eliminating anyone who stands in her way." John listened intently as Lisa recounted her story, how Karen had pressured her to sell her property, spreading rumors to isolate her, pushing her into financial ruin. The HOA's rules had been twisted to serve Karen's personal vendetta and ambitions. "But how did you escape?" John asked. Lisa smiled faintly. "I left before it got worse, but I kept records. Emails, messages, even recordings. I've been watching from the sidelines, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up to her." John felt a surge of hope. Here was a piece of the puzzle he desperately needed. Together, they sifted through Lisa's evidence, uncovering a damning trail of manipulation, intimidation, and collusion with Marcus Blake, the developer hungry for land. The revelations painted Karen as more than just a power-hungry HOA president. She was a puppeteer, pulling strings that controlled the fate of the entire community. As they planned their next move, John's phone buzzed again. A new anonymous message appeared. "Stop digging or face the consequences." But John's fear had transformed into defiance. With Lisa's help, he decided to take the evidence public. They drafted a detailed report to present at the upcoming HOA meeting, hoping to rally the community against Karen's tyranny. The day of the meeting arrived, tension thick in the air. The community hall was packed tighter than ever. John and Lisa stood side by side, their hearts pounding as Karen took the floor, ready to launch another attack. But this time, the script was about to change. When John stepped up to speak, he held Lisa's report high for all to see. "This isn't just about me or Titan anymore," John declared. "It's about exposing the truth. Karen's been using the HOA to manipulate, intimidate, and silence those she sees as threats, all to line the pockets of a developer who wants to destroy our neighborhood." Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. Karen's face paled, her usual composure cracking. Neighbors began to share their own stories. Small betrayals, unexplained fines, silent threats, each thread weaving into a larger tapestry of Karen's control. The atmosphere shifted. Fear gave way to anger. Suspicion turned into action. Karen's allies faltered, and for the first time, the community saw the cracks in her armor. But just as hope surged, the room plunged into darkness. The power cut out. A chilling voice echoed over the PA system, a distorted warning. "This is your last chance. Stop now, or everything you love will burn." Panic flickered in the crowd's eyes. John gripped Lisa's hand tightly. The battle for the neighborhood's soul was far from over. But now, with allies by his side and the truth in the light, John was ready to fight like never before. The darkness in the community hall was suffocating. The sudden blackout had thrown the room into chaos. Nervous whispers turned into uneasy murmurs. Shadows danced on the walls as people fumbled for their phones, casting flickering lights. John's grip on Lisa's hand tightened. The ominous voice from the PA system echoed again. "This is your last warning. Drop the accusations or suffer the consequences." Karen's confident facade had vanished, replaced by a rare flicker of fear. She glanced nervously around, her poised mask cracking under the weight of exposure. John stepped forward, voice loud and clear despite the tension. "We will not be intimidated. This community deserves the truth, and we're giving it to them." Suddenly, emergency lights flickered on, illuminating the room. The local sheriff and deputies burst through the doors, swiftly moving to secure the area. "Everyone stay calm," the sheriff commanded. "We've been investigating HOA corruption and harassment complaints. This blackout was no accident." The crowd gasped. It seemed the truth had finally caught up with Karen. In the chaos, Karen bolted toward the back exit. John and Lisa exchanged a quick glance, then followed. Outside, Karen was met by Marcus Blake, the developer. Their hurried conversation was cut short when the sheriff's deputies intercepted them. Karen's plans were unraveling, but the biggest surprise was yet to come. During the investigation, deputies discovered Karen's secret ledger, a detailed account of bribes, threats, and covert meetings with Blake, revealing a scheme to force homeowners off their properties. But the final shock wasn't in the ledger. It was in Karen's phone. Among her messages, John found a chilling confession. Not from Karen, but from someone he never suspected. Marcus Blake himself. The message was clear. Titan was a problem. Make sure he never threatens the deal again. John's blood ran cold. The truth he'd been chasing for months suddenly snapped into focus. Karen hadn't killed Titan. Marcus Blake had. He'd orchestrated the attack to scare John into submission, using Karen as his pawn in the grand scheme. John stared at the message, fury and disbelief mixing inside him. The lawsuit, the intimidation, the attempts to destroy him. It was all a cover for a deeper, darker plot. Armed with this evidence, the sheriff's office arrested Blake, while Karen was charged as an accomplice. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, but for John, the battle was bittersweet. Titan was gone, a casualty of greed and betrayal. But justice had been served. As the community rallied around John, pledging to rebuild trust and protect their homes, John looked to the horizon. This fight had tested everything he had: his courage, his resolve, and his faith in the good within people. Now, standing tall amidst the wreckage, he knew one thing for certain: no one would ever threaten his home or his legacy again, and the legend of Titan, the prize bull who had sparked a revolution, would live on forever.